The galaxy was wide and full of bright stars, yet some places were left behind. Far at the edge of known space there was a silent planet. It had mountains that rose like jagged teeth and valleys covered with deep green forests. Rivers cut across the land, shining like silver under the light of two pale suns. No city lights glowed at night. No ships crossed its skies. To most of the galaxy, this world did not exist anymore. But on that quiet planet lived someone who was not meant to be forgotten. Her name was Asha. She was not human. Her skin carried a faint copper tone. Her eyes were sharp and her long hair flowed like black threads in the wind. Many years ago, she had stood as a voice for freedom among her people. She had spoken against rulers who controlled everything with fear. She had led others in protest, demanding dignity and choice. But the rebellion failed. Her allies were captured, her people betrayed her cause, and her enemies chose not to kill her. Instead, they left her here, far away from every star and every voice. The planet became her cage. Days stretched into months and months into years. She built a small home among the stone cliffs. She learned the movements of the beasts that roamed the land. She knew which plants healed wounds and which carried poison. She survived, but her heart carried the weight of silence. She often looked to the sky and wondered if anyone would ever remember her. Far across space, another story began. A human named Ryan was traveling through the outer rim. Ryan was not a soldier. He was not a ruler. He was an explorer. He loved old maps and broken records, the kind of information others ignored. His small ship, sturdy but not grand, carried him from one forgotten world to another. He believed that history was never truly lost. Someone only needed to look for it. On one long journey, his ship detected a strange pull in its engines. Something was wrong. Warning lights blinked red and the ship began to drift off course. Ryan tried to stabilize it, but the nearest safe harbor was far away. His only chance was to land on the silent planet below. The surface looked empty on his scanners, but he had no other choice. With careful hands, he guided his ship through the clouds. Storms rumbled in the sky. Lightning flashed across the horizon. The ship shook, but Ryan's focus never broke. At last, with a heavy thud, the vessel touched down in a wide valley surrounded by tall cliffs. The engines hissed, smoke rising into the air. The ship was alive, but broken. He could not leave until repairs were done. Ryan stepped outside with a tool bag and a small scanner. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of earth and green leaves. Birds with long wings circled above. Strange calls echoed from the forest. He looked around with wide eyes. To him, every unknown world was beautiful, even if it was wild. He began his work, setting up small equipment near the ship. Hours passed, and he noticed something unusual. Tracks in the soil. Not animal tracks, but shaped with intention. They looked like footprints. His chest tightened with surprise. The planet was marked empty in every record. No colonies, no travelers, no cities. Yet here was proof of life. Curiosity burned inside him. Ryan followed the tracks. They wound between rocks, across a shallow stream, and into a narrow pass. The wind grew cooler as he walked. His scanner picked up faint signs of energy ahead. At last he saw it. A small home built from stone and wood. Smoke drifted from a chimney. The walls were rough but strong, built with patience and skill. Someone was living here. Then he saw her. Asha stood near the doorway, her eyes fixed on him. Her posture was straight, her shoulders tense. She did not speak, but her gaze was sharp enough to pierce the silence. She looked at the strange man with caution, ready to defend herself. Ryan stopped at once. He raised his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapon. He spoke with calm words. "I did not know this place was home to anyone. I'm only here because my ship needs repair. I will leave once it can fly again." Asha said nothing. Her face carried years of distrust. To her, humans were not strangers. She remembered their part in crushing her rebellion. She had no reason to welcome one now. Still, she watched him carefully. Ryan, respecting her silence, placed his tool bag on the ground. He pulled out a small container of water and set it near the edge of the path. "I have more if you need it," he said. Then he turned and walked back toward his ship. From the shadows of her doorway, Asha looked at the container. She had her own ways to gather water, but his action unsettled her. It was not what she expected from a human. He had shown respect. He had left something behind without asking for anything. She did not move toward it at once, but later, when the night grew colder, she picked it up and placed it inside her home. The next day, Ryan returned to his work on the ship. He did not approach her home again. He gathered spare parts, adjusted circuits, and tested the damaged engine. Each evening he left a small gift at the edge of the path. Sometimes it was dried fruit. Sometimes a tool he thought she might use. Asha never showed herself, but the items always vanished by morning. On the 5th day, she spoke at last. When he set down another gift, a voice came from the shadows of the trees. "Why are you doing this?" Ryan turned, surprised but calm. "Because you live here. Because it is not right to pretend you do not. I mean no harm." Asha stepped into the light. Her eyes studied him with quiet suspicion. "Humans brought me here. They left me to be forgotten. Why should I trust another?" Ryan's voice was steady. "Not all humans are the same. I do not know what was done to you, but I know what it feels like to be unseen. That is why I look for forgotten worlds." For a moment, silence hung between them. The forest stirred with the sound of insects. The wind rustled the leaves. Asha's expression softened slightly, though her guard remained high. She turned away, returning to her home, but Ryan felt something change in that brief moment. A wall had cracked. That night, Asha sat by her fire, staring at the water container he had left days ago. She thought of her long years of isolation. She thought of the rebellion she once led, and the betrayal that followed. She thought of how easy it would be to let bitterness consume her. Yet the human's patience disturbed that pattern. In the valley below, Ryan sat inside his ship, repairing damaged circuits. His mind was restless. He knew little about the woman he had found, but he felt the weight of her loneliness even in silence. He wondered how long she had lived here, how much pain she carried, and whether she wanted to be remembered or left alone. The planet slept beneath twin moons. One woman sat by her fire, clinging to fragments of the past. One man worked beneath the dim light of his ship, driven by curiosity and respect. Neither knew that their meeting was only the beginning of something greater. Morning light touched the valley with a soft glow. Mist hung above the rivers, and the tall cliffs seemed to guard the land like watchtowers. Ryan stood outside his ship, tightening the last bolts on a repaired panel. His hands moved carefully, but his eyes often wandered toward the narrow path that led to Asha's home. He did not expect her to come out, yet part of him hoped. For days, their strange routine had continued. He worked, and he left small gifts. She stayed hidden, though her silence had begun to change. She had spoken once, asking why he offered kindness, and her voice still echoed in his memory. That morning, as he adjusted a circuit near the engine, a sound came from behind. It was not the growl of a beast or the rustle of leaves. It was a steady set of footsteps. Ryan turned and saw her. Asha walked toward him with firm steps, her posture tall and guarded. She wore a cloak woven from fibers of local plants, and her eyes held the same sharpness as before. "You are still here," she said. Her voice carried suspicion, but less bitterness than before. Ryan placed his tools aside and nodded. "The repairs are not finished. My ship will take more time. You could have sent a signal," she said. "Others would come for you." "I did not," Ryan answered. "This place seemed quiet. I thought you would want it to stay that way." Her eyes narrowed. She studied him for a long moment, as though weighing his words. Then she crossed her arms. "You know nothing of what I want." "Then tell me," Ryan said calmly. Asha turned her gaze to the mountains. She did not answer at once. Her silence stretched long, but Ryan did not rush her. At last she spoke. "I want freedom, but freedom was taken from me. My people once looked to me as a leader. I raised my voice when others were silent. I asked for choice when others bent their heads. They followed me until fear broke them. Then they abandoned me, and the rulers left me here to vanish from memory." Her words were strong, yet sorrow hid behind them. Ryan listened with care. "You survived. That means your spirit did not vanish." Asha looked back at him. "Survival is not the same as living. I wake each day only because my body refuses to fail, but my voice has been buried by silence. Who would listen now?" Ryan felt the weight of her question. He met her eyes and answered simply, "I would." The honesty in his tone unsettled her. She turned away, as if unwilling to let him see the small spark of hope that flickered inside. "You are only one man," she said. "Every voice begins with one," Ryan replied. For the first time since they met, she allowed a small, uncertain smile to touch her lips. It was gone quickly, but it had been there. That day she stayed near his ship, watching as he worked. At first she kept her distance, standing with arms crossed. Later she asked what each tool was for. Ryan explained with patience, showing her the scanner, the welding torch, the stabilizer coils. She touched each item with cautious hands, learning their shapes and uses. In return, she showed him herbs she had gathered from the forest. She explained which leaves cured fever, which roots eased pain, which berries gave strength for long walks. Ryan listened with interest, realizing that her knowledge of this world was as deep as any map he carried. By evening, they sat near a small fire outside the ship. The flames crackled and sparks rose into the darkening sky. Ryan shared dried bread from his supply pack. Asha roasted a set of roots she had dug earlier. Together they ate in quiet, but the silence no longer felt heavy. It felt shared. When the stars appeared, Asha looked upward. Her eyes glistened with memory. I once dreamed of standing among them, guiding my people to a better path. Now I sit on a world forgotten by the galaxy. Ryan followed her gaze. Dreams are not destroyed by exile. They're only waiting for a new chance. She shook her head. You speak with hope. Hope is a fragile thing. It breaks easily. Sometimes, Ryan said, fragile things are the most powerful. They endure even when everything else falls. Asha studied him again. She saw no mockery in his words, only quiet conviction. It confused her. For years she had seen humans as enemies, but this one man spoke with honesty that made her question her beliefs. The next days built upon this fragile trust. Asha guided Ryan to hidden springs where clean water flowed. She showed him stones that sparked when struck together, useful for fire. He in turn let her watch as he pieced together broken wires and cooling vents on his ship. Their conversations grew longer. She told him fragments of her past, the great plazas where she once spoke to crowds, the banners of rebellion that waved in the wind, the first clash against the ruler's soldiers. Her voice carried both pride and pain. Ryan listened with steady attention, never interrupting, never judging. At times, her anger flared. She recalled betrayal, when some of her closest allies surrendered and gave her name to the rulers. She clenched her fists, her voice sharp with bitterness. They called me dangerous. They said I would lead our people to ruin, but I wanted only to free them from chains. Ryan did not try to soften her anger. He let her speak until her fire calmed. Then he said, perhaps they feared what they did not understand. Fear blinds even the strong. Her eyes softened slightly. And what of you? Do you fear me? Ryan shook his head. No, I see strength, not danger. The word struck her more deeply than she expected. For so long she had been seen as a threat, a memory to erase. To be seen as strength rather than danger stirred something she thought long buried. One evening while they walked near the cliffs, Asha stopped at a stone wall marked with carvings. The symbols glowed faintly in the fading light. She placed her hand upon them. These were left by my people long ago. They are reminders of who we were before fear took us. Now they stand only for me, a leader without followers. Ryan touched the carvings gently. Symbols do not vanish when one person remembers. You keep them alive. She looked at him, her voice low. Do you not tire of carrying hope for someone else? He smiled faintly. Hope is not heavy when shared. That night, Asha dreamed for the first time in years. In her dream, she stood again before a crowd, her voice rising like a clear bell. She saw faces listening, not with fear, but with trust. She woke with tears on her cheeks, unsure if they came from sorrow or longing. The following day, Ryan's scanner detected faint energy signatures deeper in the valley. Curious, he invited Asha to explore with him. Together, they followed the readings through winding paths until they reached ruins half buried by earth. Broken walls rose from the ground, covered in moss. Metal fragments glimmered under layers of soil. Asha's breath caught. This was once a meeting place of my people. Here we planned our first steps toward freedom. As they explored, Ryan found old data crystals hidden in the rubble. He examined them with care, realizing they might hold records from the past. Asha watched with a mix of awe and sorrow. These are pieces of truth, Ryan said. If they can be restored, the galaxy may know your story. Her eyes widened. And if they know, they will hunt me again. Or they may listen, Ryan said softly. She turned away, torn between fear and longing. For so long she had hidden in silence. Now, a path toward remembrance was opening. That night, as the stars returned, Asha sat near the fire with her cloak wrapped around her shoulders. She looked at Ryan, her voice steady but filled with unspoken weight. You have given me more than food or tools. You have given me a chance to speak again. I do not know if I can accept it. Ryan met her gaze. You do not have to decide now. I will finish repairing my ship soon. When I leave, the choice will be yours, to remain hidden or to step forward. Her heart ached with the weight of that choice. She had long believed her story ended with exile. Now a new page waited before her, fragile but real. The fire crackled between them. Above, the stars shone, distant yet patient, as though waiting for her voice to rise once more. The days passed quietly, yet a change had taken root. Asha no longer hid in the shadows of her home. She walked with Rian through the valleys and cliffs, showing him paths she had memorized over years of solitude. He in turn showed her how each repaired part of his ship worked, explaining with patience so she could understand. Their bond grew stronger with each step, not rushed but steady, like a river carving its way through stone. One morning, the scanner on Ryan's wrist beeped with a sharp tone. He tapped the screen, frowning at the sudden readings. "The signal is strong," he murmured. "Something deep underground is still alive. Energy is flowing where none should exist." Asha looked over his shoulder. "This world holds more than silence. Long ago we built places of memory. They were meant to protect truth in case lies ever ruled. Perhaps one has survived." Her voice carried both pride and sorrow. For her, truth had been both weapon and wound. She had tried to use it to lead her people, yet the rulers had twisted it against her. Together they followed the readings. The path led them across a wide plain where the grass grew tall. The ground sloped downward until they reached a ridge lined with jagged rocks. At the base of the ridge, half buried by earth, stood the broken entrance to a structure. Stone walls leaned inward, cracked by time. Vines coiled over their surface, yet faint lines of glowing script still shimmered across them. Asha stepped forward and traced her hand over the symbols. Her fingers trembled. "These are the words of my ancestors. They wrote of freedom here. They wanted us never to forget." Rian bent down and brushed away dirt from a small panel near the doorway. It was made of metal, different from the stone around it. With his tools, he pried it open, revealing old circuits inside. To his surprise, when he connected his scanner, the circuits flickered faintly with light. "This place still breathes," he whispered. The doorway rumbled. Dust fell from above. Slowly, with a groaning sound, the entrance shifted open. Inside was a corridor stretching into darkness. Asha's chest rose and fell quickly. She felt both drawn and afraid. It had been so long since she had seen anything built by her people. Ryan placed a hand on the side of the entrance and looked at her. "We go together," he said. She nodded. Together they stepped inside. The corridor led them downward, lit by faint blue lights that sparked as though waking from sleep. Symbols carved into the walls told stories of her people, scenes of harvest, of celebration, of struggle. Asha touched them as they passed, her eyes shining with memory. At the end of the corridor lay a wide chamber. In its center stood a tall column of glass and metal, humming with weak energy. Around it were scattered data crystals, most broken, some still intact. The air smelled of dust and time. Ryan moved toward the column and connected his scanner. Streams of symbols flowed across his screen. He frowned, then smiled. "This is a memory core. It holds records. Some are damaged, but many remain." Asha approached slowly. Her eyes widened as she read fragments glowing across the column. "These are the words of those who stood with me. Records of our meetings, our plans, our hope." She reached out but hesitated, her hand trembling. It was as if she feared the truth would vanish if she touched it. Rian gave a small nod. "It is yours. No one else has guarded it. No one else has the right." Her hand pressed against the glass. Images flickered to life, faces of her companions, voices echoing with passion. They spoke of justice, of dignity, of breaking the chains of fear. Tears filled her eyes. She had not heard their voices in so many years. Then another image appeared. It was of the rulers, their faces stern and proud. The records revealed something Asha had never seen before. Messages between rulers and powerful merchants, trading promises for silence, offering wealth for betrayal. Asha gasped. This shows how they destroyed us. They made deals in secret. They spread lies to turn people against me. They feared my voice, so they painted me as a monster." Ryan's jaw tightened as he read the translations on his scanner. "You were not defeated by weakness. You were betrayed from within." Her hand shook as the weight of revelation pressed upon her. For years she had believed her people abandoned her out of fear alone. Now she saw that her fall was carefully crafted. She was not just a prisoner of exile. She was the victim of a plan to erase her and the cause she carried. Her knees bent and she sank to the ground. I carried this shame for so long. I thought I failed them. But it was not my failure. It was their treachery. Ryan knelt beside her. His voice was calm but firm. This truth cannot remain buried. It belongs to the galaxy. If people see this, they will know you were not the villain they were told. They will see the truth. Asha lifted her head. Or they will silence me again. The rulers may still hold power. They may not allow this truth to live. Then we make it live, Ryan said. Together, her eyes met his. For the first time, she saw not only kindness but determination in him. He was not bound by her past, yet he was willing to carry it with her. They gathered as many data crystals as they could carry. Ryan stored them carefully in protective cases. As they prepared to leave, a sound echoed through the chamber. A faint hum like distant thunder. What is that? Asha asked, her eyes narrowing. Ryan checked his scanner. The energy we awakened may have sent a signal. If anyone is listening in the void, they might now know this place is alive again. Asha's chest tightened. Then danger will come. Ryan gave a small nod. Yes, but so will opportunity. They left the ruins and returned to the surface. The suns were setting, painting the sky in gold and crimson. Asha carried the weight of new knowledge in her heart. She looked across the valley, her mind filled with both fear and fire. That night they sat by the fire again. The crystals lay beside them, glowing faintly with stored memory. Ryan spoke quietly. Do you know what these mean? They are more than proof of betrayal. They are proof of your courage. They show that you stood for truth when others traded it for comfort. Asha stared into the flames. For years I told myself that my voice was wasted, that no one would ever hear it again. Now I see that my voice never truly died. It has been waiting, buried in silence, until someone was willing to listen. Ryan leaned forward. I am listening. And soon others will too. Her eyes glistened. She felt a spark of the leader she had once been rising again inside her. Yet fear lingered. If I speak again, I risk everything. They may come for me with greater force than before. Then let them, Ryan said. His tone was steady, almost fierce. They will find you not alone, but with an ally. And the truth will be harder to silence than one voice alone. Asha breathed deeply. For the first time in many years, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond exile. A future where her story did not end with silence but began again with truth. As the fire burned low, she whispered almost to herself. Perhaps freedom was not destroyed. Perhaps it was only waiting. Ryan looked at her with quiet respect. Then let us find it together. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly across the sky. Somewhere far away, power still ruled with lies and fear. But here on this quiet planet, truth had awakened. And with it, the voice of a rebellious woman who had once been forgotten, now prepared to rise again. The night was quiet, yet both Ryan and Asha could feel the weight of change in the air. The ruins had given them truth, but truth never remained hidden without cost. Ryan's scanner kept flashing with faint warnings, signals that should not have existed in an empty sky. Asha sat near the fire, her arms wrapped around her knees. You said the energy may have sent out a call. If others have heard it, who will come? Ryan checked his screen again. Not rescuers, not explorers, likely scavengers or mercenaries. The galaxy is filled with those who chase power and wealth. If they learn that this planet holds records of betrayal, they will see it as a prize, and they will come ready to take it. Asha's eyes narrowed. Then the silence of this place is broken. We cannot hide any longer. The next morning proved his words true. At dawn, the sky trembled with the roar of engines. A dark shape cut through the clouds, a ship larger than Ryan's, its hull painted with markings of a private crew. It descended into the valley with the heavy grace of a predator. Dust rose in storms as it landed on the plain. Ryan pulled Asha into the cover of the trees. Together they watched as the ship's ramp lowered. Figures stepped out, wearing armor patched with scars of old battles. Their leader, a tall man with a cold gaze, surveyed the land like a hunter who already claimed his prey. These are mercenaries, Ryan whispered. They will not leave without taking something. Asha clenched her fists. They will come for the ruins. And if they see me, they will not let me live. Ryan placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Then we make sure they do not see you as prey. We stand together. The mercenaries spread out, scanning the ground with devices. Some moved toward the ruins while others stayed near their ship. Ryan pulled Asha back toward his own vessel. Inside, he worked quickly, gathering what tools and weapons he had. He was not a soldier. but he knew how to defend himself. "We cannot fight them with strength," he said. "They have numbers and firepower. But you know this land. We can use it." Asha nodded, her eyes sharp with old fire. "This valley is filled with paths they do not know. I have walked every stone. If we guide them where we choose, their strength will turn against them." Together, they laid a plan. Asha would lead them into the narrow passes where cliffs would block their movement. Ryan would set traps with small explosives and shock devices from his ship. They would not defeat the mercenaries in open battle, but they could outwit them. The day grew tense. The mercenaries moved closer to the ruins. Their scanners picked up the faint energy signals, and their leader ordered them to dig deeper. But soon one of them shouted, pointing toward Ryan's ship. The presence of another vessel had been discovered. The leader's voice carried across the plain. "Someone else is here. Find them." Asha and Ryan exchanged a look. There was no more time. They moved swiftly into the cliffs, setting traps along the way. Ryan rigged small charges that would send rocks tumbling, while Asha guided him to narrow trails where a single misstep could mean a fall. As evening fell, the mercenaries entered the passes. Their armored boots clanged against stone. Their voices echoed off the cliffs. One moved ahead only to trigger a trap. Rocks tumbled down, forcing them to scatter. Dust filled the air and their formation broke. Asha moved like a shadow, throwing stones to mislead them, guiding them toward dangerous paths. Ryan, hidden in another ridge, triggered a shock device that sent bright sparks across their scanners, confusing their equipment. The mercenaries grew frustrated. "They are here!" one shouted. "They are watching us," their leader growled. "Good, let them come. We will catch them." But Asha and Ryan never came directly. They struck from shadows, disappeared, and struck again. Hours passed, and the mercenaries grew weary. At last, the leader changed his plan. He ordered 2 of his men back to Ryan's ship. "If we cannot find them, we burn what they own. They will come to us." Asha's breath caught when she heard this. "If they destroy your ship, we cannot leave." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Then we stop them before they reach it." They raced through hidden paths, moving faster than the mercenaries could follow. When they reached the valley floor, they saw the 2 men already near his vessel. One carried a torch ready to set fire to the hull. Ryan aimed his small blaster. The shot hit the torch, sending it spinning away in flames. Asha leapt from the shadows, striking the second mercenary with a heavy branch. The man stumbled, surprised by her strength. The fight was quick and rough. Ryan used his tools like weapons, striking at joints in the mercenary's armor. Asha moved with agility, her years of surviving the wild giving her speed. Together, they forced the 2 men to retreat. But their victory was brief. The leader and the rest of the crew were returning, their eyes blazing with fury. "We cannot hold them off forever," Ryan said, breathing hard. Asha's gaze was firm. "Then we do not fight forever. We fight for one purpose, to protect the truth." They pulled back toward the ruins, carrying the data crystals with them. The mercenaries followed, drawn by the trail. Soon the 2 sides stood within the broken chamber of memory. The mercenary leader's eyes lit up as he saw the glowing column. "So this is what you hide," he said with a cruel smile. "The voice of a dead rebellion, worth a fortune to the right buyers." Asha stepped forward, her cloak falling back from her shoulders. Her voice rang clear in the chamber. "These records are not for sale. They are the proof of betrayal, the voice of truth that will not be silenced again." The mercenaries stared, realizing who she was. Some whispered in shock. The leader laughed. "So the ghost still lives. How fitting. You will fetch an even greater price alive." Ryan moved to her side, his blaster ready. "You will not take her," the leader sneered. "One human cannot stop us." But Ryan did not stand alone. Asha raised her voice, strong and commanding, as if the years of silence had never broken her spirit. "You think yourselves hunters, but you stand in my home. You know the strength of weapons, but I know the strength of truth. It is heavier than chains, brighter than fire, and sharper than blades. And it will not be yours." The mercenaries shifted uneasily. Some lowered their weapons, unsettled by the force of her words. The leader growled. But before he could command, Ryan pressed a button on his wrist. Explosives planted earlier along the cliffs detonated with thunder. The chamber shook, dust and stone falling from above. The mercenaries stumbled, coughing in the haze. Asha and Ryan moved swiftly, guiding each other out through a hidden passage she remembered from years past. By the time the mercenaries regained their strength, the 2 had vanished into the night. They returned to the valley, weary, but alive. The crystals remained safe, glowing faintly in Rian's pack. Asha stood under the stars, her chest rising with fierce pride. For the first time since her exile, she had spoken with the power of a leader once more. Rian looked at her with quiet respect. You were not forgotten. And now the galaxy will remember. She met his gaze, fire burning in her eyes. Let them come. I am ready. The night was far from peaceful. The mercenaries still prowled the valley and danger still lingered. Yet in that moment, Asha and Rian stood unbroken. The voice of truth had returned, and no force of greed or fear could erase it again. The night stretched long after the escape from the ruins. Asha and Rian found themselves hidden in the high cliffs above the valley, where the mercenaries still searched below. Fires burned near their ship, and the enemy's leader barked orders in frustration. They had not given up, and both Asha and Rian knew the hunt would continue until something decisive was done. Rian leaned against the rocks, adjusting the settings on his scanner. His voice was steady, but his eyes were tired. We cannot stay hidden forever. Their ship carries more supplies, more weapons, and more power than we have. If we keep running, they will catch us. Asha stood near the cliff's edge, gazing down at the mercenaries. Her cloak shifted in the cold wind. I lived in silence for years. I learned to run, to hide, to survive. But now I see the truth. Hiding only gives the enemy more ground. If the past taught me anything, it is that silence can be as deadly as betrayal. Rian studied her face, lit by faint moonlight. Then you mean to fight them openly? Her voice was calm but strong. Not only fight them. Defeat them so completely that no one else will dare to chase these ruins. If they leave here alive with hope of victory, they will return with more soldiers. If they leave broken, the valley may breathe again. Rian hesitated, then gave a small nod. Then we plan for one last battle. Preparing for the final stand, the next day was spent in preparation. Asha guided Rian through hidden caves carved deep into the cliffs. They found stones loose enough to roll down, narrow passages that could trap armored men, and high ledges where they could strike from above. Rian worked with steady hands, turning his small collection of tools into weapons. Shock charges were set into the rock walls, ready to release blinding flashes of light. Small explosives were hidden under loose earth. He even rewired his ship's beacon into a trap, one that would lure the mercenaries into a false signal. Asha moved with purpose, her mind sharp. She gathered sharp branches hardened by fire, tied ropes across paths, and shaped the land into a maze of danger. Each movement showed the strength of a woman who had survived years alone, but now carried a fire brighter than survival. When they paused for water, Rian looked at her with quiet admiration. You are not the forgotten exile they left here. You are a leader again. Asha's eyes softened. A leader is nothing without someone who believes. Alone, I was only a shadow. With you, the shadow has become a voice again. The battle begins. The mercenaries did not wait long. By late afternoon, they advanced into the cliffs, their leader determined to crush whatever resistance had humiliated him before. Their boots echoed against stone. Their scanners swept the ridges, and their weapons gleamed in the dim light. From above, Asha and Rian watched. When the first group stepped into a narrow path, Rian pressed a switch. The rocks he had set loose tumbled down, crashing into the mercenaries and splitting their formation. Ambush! Shouted one of the soldiers. Asha's voice carried over the cliffs. You came for treasure, but you will find only your own fear. Her words struck like arrows. The mercenaries hesitated, unsettled by the certainty in her tone. Rian fired a shock charge, sending sparks of blue light across their scanners. The devices went wild, flashing false signals. Confusion spread among the enemy. One mercenary raised his weapon, but Asha leapt down from a ledge, her staff striking hard against his arm. He stumbled back, shocked not only by her speed but also by her presence. For years they had heard only rumors of the rebellious woman, yet here she was, alive, fierce and unbroken. The leader snarled, Do not fear her. She is only one woman. Crush them both. But fear was already working its way into the crew. The land itself seemed to fight against them. Paths crumbled, ropes pulled men off balance, and flashes of light blinded their eyes. The more they pressed forward, the more they lost their strength. Rian moved quickly between hiding spots, striking from a distance with his blaster and traps. Asha fought close, her staff whirling with precision. Together, they moved like two sides of the same force, one striking from the shadows, the other blazing openly with fire and courage. The turning point hours passed, and the battle grew harsher. The mercenaries fought with desperate rage, forcing Asha and Ryan back toward the ruins. For every enemy who fell, 2 more pressed forward. Dust filled the air and the cries of combat echoed through the cliffs. At last, the leader himself stepped forward. His armor was heavy, his weapon sharp and humming with energy. He raised it toward Asha, his eyes filled with cold triumph. "You think truth can shield you? You think a forgotten woman and a wandering human can stand against real power?" He shouted. Asha stood tall, her staff in hand. "Power without honor is nothing but chains, and chains can be broken." The leader attacked. Their weapons clashed with sparks. Asha moved with speed, striking again and again, but his armor was strong. He forced her back, blow after blow, until her staff cracked under the weight of his strike. Ryan rushed forward, firing his blaster. The shot hit the leader's shoulder, sending him stumbling. But the man roared and turned his weapon on Ryan instead. In that moment, Asha found her strength not in anger, but in memory. She thought of her people, silenced by betrayal. She thought of the years of exile, of the voice that had burned inside her even in the darkest nights. She thought of Ryan, who had believed in her when the galaxy had turned away. With a cry that shook the chamber, she grabbed the broken half of her staff and drove it into the leader's chest where his armor was weakest. The man fell to his knees, his weapon slipping from his hands. The mercenaries froze, stunned by the sight. Their leader, the strongest among them, lay defeated at the feet of the woman they had called forgotten. Asha stood over him, her voice ringing with command. "Leave this place. Tell your masters the truth is alive and cannot be stolen. If you return, you will find not silence, but resistance." The mercenaries, broken in spirit, dragged their fallen leader back toward their ship. None dared to challenge her again. Soon the sound of engines filled the sky, and the enemy vessel rose into the clouds, shrinking into the horizon. After the battle, the valley fell quiet once more. Asha stood with the broken staff in her hands, her chest rising with heavy breaths. Ryan came to her side, his eyes filled with pride. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it," she corrected, placing a hand on his shoulder. They returned to the ruins, where the glowing crystals still pulsed faintly with memory. Asha placed her hand on the column once more. The voices of the past filled the chamber, but this time they felt lighter, no longer a burden but a promise. "The rebellion was not lost," she whispered. "It only waited for the right moment to rise again." Ryan smiled. "And perhaps this time it will rise with both human and alien voices together." She turned to him, her eyes steady. "Will you carry this truth back to your people?" "Yes," he said. "And not just as words. I will tell them of you. I will tell them the forgotten woman was not forgotten at all. She was stronger than silence, stronger than betrayal." For a long time they stood in the ruins, letting the quiet of the valley wrap around them. Choosing tomorrow days later, the two prepared to leave. Ryan repaired his ship with what little remained of his supplies. Asha packed the few belongings she had carried through years of exile. Yet when the moment came to step aboard, she hesitated. "This has been my prison and my home," she said softly. "Leaving it behind feels like leaving part of myself." Ryan placed a hand over hers. "Then bring what matters most, the strength you found here. The galaxy needs it more than these stones." Asha breathed deeply, then stepped onto the ship. As the engines roared and the ground fell away, she looked through the window at the valley shrinking below. For years it had been the edge of her world. Now it was only the beginning. The stars opened before them, endless and waiting. Ryan guided the ship into the dark sky, his heart steady with hope. Beside him, Asha sat tall, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Neither spoke for a time. The silence was not heavy now. It was full of promise. At last, Asha said, "The galaxy will hear us. And when it does, it will remember that even the forgotten can return." Ryan smiled. "And when it remembers, it will change." The ship moved forward into the unknown, carrying not just 2 lives, but the voice of truth itself. The rebellion of the past had been silenced, but the rebellion of tomorrow had just begun.